with Jess Lujan.
Hey, we're back with main studio guest, former Senator Bob Klitzkie. We're talking about government in general, where we're at and where we're going. Bob, recently the legislature just passed I guess the governor's bill, basically, and it's looking for its deficit bill, basically, deficit reduction. The governor called for a $72 million cut in government operations. The legislature passed a bill that entailed $2 million in cuts. We talk nationally about the federal government going over the fiscal cliff here come January. I think we're over that cliff already, are we not?
Well, given the fact that income tax refunds are going to have to be paid in a timely fashion, if we're not over the cliff, we're hanging by one fingernail.
I mean, your thoughts on the governor's proposal versus the legislature and areas to cut at this point. If you were there, I mean, you're a big advocate on, of course, part-time legislature and legislative, at least that branch of government's reduction and the need or the lack of a need to have that much money, and for the, I guess, amount of work or quality of work that comes out of there.
Yeah, that's a perfect place to start. When this legislature started, there was nearly a $750 million rollover in so-called lapsed funds from the legislature before. And as we know, in the 30th legislature, they discovered a pay raise, increased their salaries pretty dramatically. Every 2 years we go through this lump sum boondoggle where...
Oh, those checks I'm sure are prepared already?
Yeah. Everybody will be happy in January when they got their lump sum checks. So
15 folks.
Yeah, 15 folks, yeah. So, you know, there are millions of dollars that could be cut out of that legislative budget and no one would notice. It isn't perhaps like reducing the budget at one of the line agencies, at Public Works or something like that, and a road doesn't get fixed or something like that. But if you reduce the budget at the legislature, no one would even notice except the people that are getting the lump sum, the salary increase, and all the rest of that stuff. Not only would there be a great savings, but it sets a good example. It's much easier to ask other people to tighten their belts when you've already pulled yours tight. But when you're doing all of these other things, you're not setting a very good example.
Your thoughts, you're a retiree, but your thoughts on the proposal on some of the things that the governor had put on the table regarding the retirement fund, early outs, and things like that?
Well, what it was just a form of borrowing. When you extend the amortization date of the retirement fund, and you lower what's called the contribution rate, which is an amount that the actuaries figure is enough to fund the retirement fund up to the end. And that's money that the government pays in addition to what the retirees paid in. So when you scrape all the paint and varnish off it, it was the means of borrowing money. And we've borrowed so much money already, we don't need to borrow any more money. If the borrowing of the money puts the retirement fund in jeopardy, then that's even worse. Now, there is a little bit of tension, and that is that the survival of retirement fund depends on people continuing to pay into it. So if you were to reduce the government workforce by 90%, that would have a devastating effect on the retirement fund. But I think that what ought to be examined is not borrowing money, in effect, from the retirement fund, especially with the so-called early out. That doesn't pass the good government test. Because let's say you have 500 people that you want to retire early. You're not going to replace them? Well, that means that you've got 500 people that you don't need. So why do we have 500 people that we don't need when we don't have very much money?
That's right.
We've got too many people. And letting those people retire early and hiring 500 more doesn't fix anything.
Now, how about, and we'll talk about this when we come back from the break, because we've got to take a break, but how about return on our investment, the investments that we make and the ratio, the loss on investments on an annual basis? We'll talk about that when we come back.
Okay.
Be right back.